The spring sports season is here. For the 7th straight year, the SEC is hoping to go to Omaha, Nebraska, and hold up the national championship just the way LSU did it last year. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, this is a conference, obviously, that really needs no introduction in college baseball. It's been the premier conference. And I think a lot of the reasons, like we talk about with football, it's not the fact that the conference wins a championship. It's the fact that it's been different teams for a very long time. You have to go pre-pandemic the last time an SEC team did not win a title.
Yeah, and I feel like up until a few years ago, the SEC basically reigned dominance in football and baseball.
Yeah.
But you just didn't know what to expect there for basketball for a little bit. And now we started to see the SEC start to take over in basketball. A little bit of a step back this year in comparison to last year. I believe they only have 4 teams in the top 25.
Yeah.
At this point last year, I think they were pretty close to 10 or 11. They were just when they went on that insane run of 14 of the 16 teams.
Right.
But this is a sport where we're starting to see where, this is where the conference starts to dominate.
Yeah.
And it just seems like outside of that year with Adley Rutschman, I mean, Arkansas still had a chance to win that year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could have kept the streak rolling. I think before then it was just Virginia was the last time.
Yeah.
Last one to win.
Right.
And then Coastal was like right before that. So, I mean,
yeah.
This could have been even longer. You take out the pandemic year as well. But it feels like ever since the pandemic year, that's when the SEC just tightened their grip, so to speak. And I believe Vanderbilt had that nice one in 2019. Kumar Rocker going with Jack Leiter and that 1-2 punch over there at Vanderbilt. And then after the pandemic, it's just been one team after another. LSU obviously won second in the last 3 years and going for 3 in the last 4.
Yeah, and it's not just concentrated to the college guys. A lot of that talent ends up being good professional. And I think that we're seeing a transition in the pipeline. A lot of now major league teams, when they go to the draft, you used to see almost all high school prospects that they would stuff in, the minor leagues for a little while, hope they develop. They're now going after college guys because these programs are so elite in preparing them for professional baseball. Yeah,
and I mean, I feel like baseball is one of those interesting ones where, like in basketball, there is potential. There is the what am I trying to say here?
Kind of the gateway.
Kind of the gateway. Like you want to get these guys out of high school so that way you can go out and get them and develop them into these. But as you mentioned, these SEC schools are really starting to develop these players on their own, and you learn a lot of things in the SEC and in college that sometimes you might not learn playing rookie ball, playing low A ball. So I mean, it can help jumpstart your career, and I feel like that's what Jay Johnson has done for some of his guys. But when you go through the most outstanding players of the College World Series in the last few years, I believe last year it was Cade Anderson. A few years ago it was Paul Skeens. But I mean, you go down that list. I mean, there are household names all over the board in the MLB right now.
Yeah, it's not uncommon now these days to see a guy shine in Omaha and then less than 2 years later be shining for the big league club. And it did not used to be like that, and it just kind of shows you the shift in college baseball. And kudos to the programs themselves putting a lot of money and resources into college baseball in order to make those programs legitimately, I would say, stepping stones into pro and Major League Baseball. You talked about Jay Johnson earlier. He kind of enters another season with this group. LSU coaching has been really interesting here lately because across the board, in football, you obviously have Lane Kiffin now. In women's basketball, you have Kim Mulkey. Jay Johnson just won a national championship. I just feel like the standard there is just probably a little bit higher than everybody else.
Yeah, and I mean, we had Chessa on when Lane Kiffin was hired, and this going back and forth between who is the true portal king, and I mean, I think you got to give it to Lane Kiffin just because I'm a baseball fan, as I mentioned earlier on the show, but I still think football reigns supreme a little bit, and it's harder to do in football because there's a lot more money at stake. I feel like football coaches have a little bit of a tighter leash than some of these baseball coaches. I mean, Jay Johnson, I think at this point, the lifetime contract is basically on the table. In what he's done for this program here in the last few years. But I mean, he's going to come into this season a little bit different than in previous seasons.
For sure.
You know, some of the prior seasons, I mean, you take a look at a few years ago, Dylan Cruz, he slugged 20-plus home runs. This is the first year under Jay Johnson that they're not going to have a guy that's projected to hit 20-plus home runs this year. And their shortstop, Stephen Milam, who I believe he's a fan favorite. Every time I hear about the LSU fans, they rave about him, and they talked a lot about him in their run at the College World Series last year. He's not. I believe he's projected to hit 11 or 12 home runs this year, so power could be a little bit of a weakness there at the box.
Yeah, we'll find out about this team as this season rolls along. We talked about Jay Johnson. There he is right here. A lot of coaches, most coaches in the SEC hold a preseason, almost state of the state address for their fans to let them know what's ahead. We heard from Coach Jay Johnson ahead of the season starts tomorrow.
Yeah, doing this, got to do one more interview, scouting for Milwaukee. Good practice today, which we'll try to keep short, for the players to be at their best physically and mentally. Cover the things that are relevant in terms of, winning the game tomorrow, and then have a short meeting afterwards, which is very common for most Thursdays during the year when we're at home. And then after that, immediate coaches meeting, scouting report, and then I'll hunker down and do my deal more after that, and then get ready to go.
I know this is the beginning of the season. You know what? Let's do it. Let's do it at the end of this break. We'll do some predictions about SEC and national champions. Yeah. Another perennial power has been the Vanderbilt Commodores. Yeah. Once again, they're expected to be a threat. Last year, I had to look it up. 19-11. I remember they had it was a good record, not necessarily what Coach Corbin and company are used to, but once again, they're going to field yet another really good team.
Well, I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they came in as the number 1 overall seed there.
Yes.
And they hosted the Nashville Regional, ended up losing to Wright State. And I think a lot of people that are really not that familiar with baseball hear Wright State and like, man, that's a crazy upset. But I think one of the great things about this sport is you have these mid-major programs that are able to make these runs. I mean, Coastal Carolina won the College World Series in 2016, and they're a mid-major school out of the Sun Belt. And Wright State is also a great program. And I think that's just what makes this sport amazing. I want to say Kent State's also going to have a really good year this year. Like, it's not that surprising. I mean, we almost saw Evansville take down Tennessee a few years ago.
That's right. And we just mentioned Coastal Carolina, who won what? I think it was like almost 15 games, 16 games in a row.
Yeah.
In the course of going from the Sun Belt Conference Championship all the way through the Super Region around, and then making it to Omaha, then getting there and being able to punch their ticket to the championship series. I do think that this is an interesting Vanderbilt team as they move forward this year. But I think that you have something interesting about what you think about either this team or somebody else in the league.
Yeah, so I was kind of doing my research on this team, and obviously Vanderbilt has become a household name and household program when it comes to baseball. And I mean, that's, you got to give all the credit in the world to Tim Corbin and what he's been able to do. Right. And then also with their interstate rival, who we'll get to in a minute, with what Tony Vitello did for Tennessee. Now that he's gone, Josh Elander's stepping up. But there's one guy that I feel like is poised to have an absolute breakout year. And I know this because I saw him play at JMU a few years ago. And in the regional, I think he blasted 3 home runs in one game. And his name is Mike Mancini.
Okay.
And when you take a look at some of these numbers, New York native, by the way, also saw this guy play in the Little League World Series. Won the Little League World Series back in 2016 for Maine Endwell. I think some people that follow the Little League World Series might know his name in that absolute great run for New York there in 2016. Ended up beating South Korea in the World Championship. You take a look at some of these numbers, they don't really jump off the charts at you, but what we've heard around this Vanderbilt program is he's been able to put on some weight this year. He had I believe a hamate injury, which we're starting to see a lot more of those recently. Yeah. I think I've had a few of those in my career. I've never broken my hamate bone, but I've definitely felt some soreness underneath the pinky, and it's not really fun to hit with. But he's been able to put on some weight, and I think now he's projected to be the everyday second baseman for Tim Corbin. With that extra weight, with that year in the SEC under his belt, I would honestly he's my sleeper to really make a jump up the draft boards this spring.
Yeah, and he could play a big role for this team as they move into the season. Coach Tim Corbin, Hall of Famer and a legend, talked about Mancini.
Yeah, I think he is. I mean, I feel he is. I mean, he's much stronger, so I think that part, he's better. But I think it just takes time sometimes for guys who get injured and need that mental reset in order to get back to how they used to feel when they weren't hurt. So there's kind of there's a process to that.
Final team we'll talk about here in this segment, the Tennessee Volunteers, and they had a really interesting offseason. You touched on it earlier. Tony Vitello ends up leaving the program, going to Major League Baseball, becoming one of, if not the first to ever make that jump from the college ranks to the Major League ranks. I didn't know if there was anybody like pre-World War II.
No.
Yeah. So
I mean, the first without any professional experience. I remember you and I talked about it the day of, and we were like, I want to say that was all the way back in October.
Yeah, it was.
And,
it was
and
the
we were
football
like,
season.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was in the works for a little bit, but they were kind of hung up on some of the terms of the contract. He ended up holding that practice. You remember that?
That's right,
He had that open practice, and then the next day took the job. But I mean, it's, as I mentioned, with Tim Corbin and what he's been able to do for Vanderbilt baseball, I mean, I don't think I've said it enough. Tony Vitello literally took this team. I honestly, this might be a crazy take.
Okay.
I want to say what Tony Vitello did for Tennessee baseball is what Bruce Pearl did for Auburn basketball.
I think that's fair. I think that's very fair.
Again, when your best player is Todd Helton,
right?
And Todd Helton is in the Hall of Fame. He's a great player, but he's not that premier player that some of these other SEC schools have had in the past. And when you are able to, I want to say double, if not triple, some of these MLB outputs.
Right.
I mean, you take a look at that 2022 team. Every single player in that starting lineup played in the MLB or was in AAA this past year.
Right, exactly. And much like what the Buffalo Bills just did after firing, Coach McDermott, they end up hiring a guy within the staff and Coach Brady. Like Duke did when Mike Krzyzewski retired. They went to the staff, a former player and a former assistant coach, John Shire, took over for the Duke basketball team. Same thing happened here in baseball with Coach Elander. There's going to be a lot of familiarity and continuity for these players as they move forward. So I think the expectation should remain a pretty high one, just like it was for the Bills and Duke.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, again, if Tennessee is able to go ahead and make another run. Now, who is your starting pitcher going to be? That's going to be one of the big questions. I mean, you take a look at what has been Tennessee's strength over the last few years. It's been their pitching and just the fact a lot can be made about Lindsey Nelson Stadium and how it's a hitter's ballpark. It's too small for it to be a college stadium. I like home runs. I think they're great for the sport. Offense is great for the sport, but also at the same time, great pitching is also really great for the sport. The one thing that just signifies Tennessee baseball to me is that one southpaw that they have. It seems like every year they go out, whether it's in the portal. Way back in the day, some Tennessee fans might remember Will Heflin. He was really good for them in the latter part of his career there at Tennessee. But it always seems like they've got one lefty that's kind of – he doesn't really throw the hardest, but at the same time, he is able to go out there and get outs for this team. And I feel like that really signifies Tennessee baseball. The offense will come, but it's just can the starting pitching get them back to Omaha this year? Yeah,
in a league as premier as the SEC, you have to win in the margins. That could be one of the margins for Tennessee as they move forward. Coach Elander talked about just the excitement, the emotions that come with entering game week.
Yeah, we're just excited to get going. I know the guys, it's been nice how the NCAA has opened it up. We've had a little bit more time, had to battle the weather a little bit, but had a good weekend. We were able to get outside 3 consecutive days, see those guys compete a little bit. But again, start of the season is here. We're excited, but again, this will be a process where I told the guys, hey, opening day is right around the corner, but needs to be a deal. Hey, this is just the beginning of getting better and better as we go through the course of the year and then eventually get into SEC play. Yes, we'll roll with Tegan Coons on Friday. We'll go Landon Mack on Saturday and then Evan Blanco on Sunday. I think that puts us in the best position to have success out of the gate. I think you can make the argument where you can mix and match those guys in any capacity, but it was pretty cool. Got to call those guys one by one last night and let them know, but total confidence in all 3 of those guys and their ability to throw the baseball.
As we leave, take for this what you will. The SEC coaches have put out their preseason poll, and it's kind of a mixed bag here. I'll just give you 1 through 5. LSU is 1 with 9 first-place votes, followed by Texas, Mississippi State, Arkansas and Auburn. As we sit here the day before the season starts, we'll pull this up in a couple of months. Who do you like?
I like Ole Miss this year.
Ole Miss, okay.
I really do.
Okay.
And that ballpark is electric. And again, we talked a little bit about LSU earlier to open up this hour. I think the lack of power, there could be very well a surprise guy that comes out and hits 25-plus home runs. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then LSU is going to have another really good year. But, I mean, you take a look at, Tommy Tanks a few years ago coming over from NC State. That was a big get for Jay Johnson and company. Obviously, Dylan Cruz had a really nice year a couple of years ago as well. Him and Paul Skeens were that 1-2 punch there for that LSU team. But I want to say Ole Miss is that team that no one is really talking about.
Right.
That could, honestly, is primed to make some serious damage if just one or two things fall in their place, and it's baseball. So that's very well could be the case.
Yeah, there always seems to be a double-digit seed a double-digit team that's in the preseason poll end up being one of the better teams in the league. This could be it. Ole Miss coming in at number 10 in the preseason poll, like the Auburn Tigers going into this season, either Auburn or Texas. I think one of those two teams that wear the orange, I think
our next guest isn't going to like to hear that.
He's not going to like to hear it, but the Oklahoma Sooners are coming in 14th. On that one, we have another guest. We have a couple of guests coming up on this week's show. We head over to Oklahoma City and Waco, Texas next.